What's up, everyone? Today I thought I'd change it up a little bit and do an artist interview with an artist named Tony Moy. He is a very fantastic watercolorist, and I hope you guys enjoy these artist interviews because there's going to be one a month. And let's get into it. All right, so we're going to start this off with some introductions. So, Tony, you can tell us about yourself.
I'm Tony Moy. I'm a watercolorist and comic book artist. I guess I've been doing conventions for about 6 years now, and a good chunk of those years I was just doing the whole moonlighting artist thing, and only recently kind of started being an artist full time, which is a very interesting thing that I'm still getting used to. It's been a year, and I'm still getting used to saying it.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Can you tell me a little bit more about being an artist full time, what that's like? So like you can just roll out of bed and just start doing whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, like it's the you got it. The discipline behind it is always a challenge because you you had the 9 to 5 job, and you try to come back, and you're trying to wake up early to find time to paint and to draw and to create. And now you have almost the luxury and ability. And so for a while, the challenge was actually wasn't just like rolling out of bed and just doing it. Like that part, I was always doing. I was always rolling out of bed and trying to get some work done before I left for work.
Right.
More as most artists that are probably in that situation, or creatives, they have the day job, and their escape, their to get their peace of mind, to reset, was the drawing or the creativity or the painting or whatever else that was. And when you're doing that full time, you realize, okay, well, what do I need to do? How do I reset from this thing that I'm still resetting? Like it's still work, it's still a job, and now you're doing it whenever you want to do it. Like how do you can't do it 18 hours a day, 16 hours a day.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's how do you escape? How do you reset? What do you do? Like how do you get new ideas in your head? For a long time, it was basically just what other people were saying, like, oh, you should do this. Like, okay, great, let's do this. Like now it's the question is sort of, what do I want to do?
Exactly.
How do I want to do it?
It's crazy because like as an artist, you can't really turn it off. It's
no.
You look at like people and you're like, hey, I can see the subtle shades and values and stuff in their face, and people don't realize that you see people like that now instead of how you used to see them.
Yeah. Before I started doing all the watercolors and painting and dealing with, I guess, this new tool of colors, I was line work, black and white, pen and ink, sort of an artist, and I would be like, oh yeah, I look around, I just see lines everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
And stuff like that, and then all of a sudden, as I got into painting and dealing with colors, like you just start. I'm like, okay, I should notice these things. Like,
yeah.
I hear artists say like, oh yeah, you look into this person's face and you see some green and some chartreuse and some teal. I'm like, where do you see that? Like, what's going on? And
exactly.
And you're like, you convince your mind that they're there, and all of a sudden you start seeing it. It's kind of like there is no spoon, and then there is.
So we'll go ahead and roll into the first question here. What got you into watercolors and art in general?
Really, it was what got me into watercolors and art, I guess, are two separate things. But like, watercolors was, I wasn't really doing anything with art per se. I was a guy in the meetings and stuff like that. I would just be doodling next to his notes and drawing. Always have a sketchbook around me, but I wasn't really necessarily pursuing things. It was, like I said before, it was just a release from the day job. And I had made some friends with a bunch of professional artists and things like that. And one of the things that I decided that I kind of got inspired to do one time was like, well, I've been doing black and white line work since, high school or when I started collecting comics. All of a sudden, I just felt the urge to figure something more out with the art. I can't really explain it, other than it was like, okay, I'm kind of, what's the next step in instead of just drawing with pencils and pens. And I remember trying Copic markers. That seemed to be a very popular thing. And so I started collecting and buying various Copic markers and stuff like that. I tried color pencils. Color pencils got me to watercolor pencils. That didn't quite do too well. I tried a little bit with acrylics, a smattering of oil painting and stuff like that, and nothing per se like clicked. Digital was in there as well.
Right.
So tried all that within a sort of a marathon of a year, and I remember I was sitting at a convention next to Ben Templesmith. Ben Templesmith does a lot of like ink washy kind of stuff.
Right.
But he keeps a small little palette of watercolor, just to like splatter some things and effects and whatever with on his work. I remember looking at that and I'm going like, oh, hey, that looks kind of cool. That looks easy.
Yeah. No way it's not.
And then I was like, okay, let me buy this. I remember it was just like, I don't want to buy super expensive. I don't want to buy cheap. I had no idea what I was getting. I bought this like $35 set of 18 colors or something like that.
Right.
With the little hard cakes. And I started going back and messing around with it. I was doing it on printer paper, on sketchbook paper. Like I was doing it on all the wrong papers, making all the mistakes.
Exactly. Yeah.
With it, like not using enough water, using too much water. Like I had no idea what I was doing.
I did the
but
same
all
thing.
I can say about it was that for whatever reason, watercolor was the thing that made like it. During that process, I just didn't want to quit. I just wanted to keep figuring it out, right? Like all the other stuff was a trial and frustration and dealing with frustration. But the watercolor stuff was like, no, why is it doing this? Like, and whether it was in my head that I thought that it should have been simpler than it was, I didn't know.
Do you have any like special projects or anything that you can actually talk about coming up in the near future?
I am going to be releasing a webcomic of my where I'm just doing everything.
Everything.
It's going to be mixed media. Anything that you've seen on my Instagram that isn't a superhero or something that you can recognize is probably from the story or book that I'm doing. It'll be it'll be a fantasy. It'll start off fantasy, but in my head it's like this fantasy sci-fi sort of thing. Of all the things basically is like I want to do something where I want to draw things paint things that I always wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, let's just kind of create a loose story around it and things like that. And over the past year, I've been just fleshing out this world so that I know what's going on. Where I get to all these ideas that I have is a completely different story altogether. But I feel like I need to get these things straight in my head before I start diving into parts of it. And I'm just about ready to like start putting in like play with little prequel stories or little little like issue zero kind of concept stories that are just hinting at like the larger story that I have in mind, just to test out the waters. One of the things that that I was inspired by or with is are these I used to play a lot of video games. I'm slowly starting to get back into it, but I had to kind of put it away. But I would always watch on YouTube these little animated shorts and these little introductions to these video games and things like that. And they're short. Sometimes they don't really have that much dialogue or whatever else, and sometimes they do. But like those sort of like short, digestible videos that the video games do very well, like I have in my head. to try to put out there in a way. And it'll be a webcomic, so open to everybody. I don't want to deal with publications. I don't want to deal with printing. I don't want to deal with carrying things to conventions to try to sell. I don't want to deal with pitching it. I just want to be like, hey, want to check it out? Here's the website. Go.
For the viewers watching, this whole interview is actually going to be on my Patreon. And Tony, if you want to put it on your Patreon too, you're more than welcome to. The entire thing, just as for patrons. The next question we're going to go with is, what's your dream project to work on that you haven't already done?
My dream project. So, what got me into comics or art or things like that, or the big. I was always, as a kid, you enjoy art. Every kid starts off as an artist, but I guess what made me go like, ooh, I like drawing. Yeah. Was I remember as a kid like getting some X-Men comics, going through a story in X-Men comics, and didn't know who artists were. I didn't know that you can know who the art. I thought they were just random artists, but there was this Jim Lee guy.
Oh yeah.
That really I thought like looked really cool and had some potential in this industry.
Yeah.
And this is like X-Men #1 kind of a thing. Like I was like, what? And so like that stuff and made me want to collect all these old X-Men. So I started getting into I started going through back issues, and that started a whole other infatuation with what I was doing with my allowance. It kept me out of a lot of trouble. And so for me, in sort of homage to that little kid that started drawing, is to do an X-Men project one day. One of the things I want to try to do is not just say like I'm going to do a watercolor book.
Yeah.
And this was also part of the challenge in crafting the story as well, was to use. I started off doing pencils and then into pens and inks, and I got into a variety of types of inks, ink drawings, whether sumi-e to more traditional, and then to painting and digital. And like I said, I tested out and messed around with a lot of these things. And so to me, it's actually trying to think of, there are certain emotions and certain feelings that different mediums will give you. And just like Frank Miller, when he does his like really stark, that Sin City kind of thing, you're just like, oh.
Yeah, exactly. So, let's see. So the next one is, how long have you been doing watercolor specifically?
I think it's been a full 6 years. 1, 2, to break the 2. Yeah. I think it's been a full 6 years since I've started doing conventions. So I picked up watercolor about a year and a bit before I did my first convention. So it's been about 7 and a bit years. And especially if you don't go to like, I guess, more traditional. I don't know if you go to art school or something like that.
No, not yet.
Neither did I. And so I had no idea what's supposed to be easier or not, or why things are easier or whatnot. All I know is like pencil is easier than pen because you can erase with a pencil.
Exactly, yeah.
So that sort of thing. And I remember when I started using watercolor, they were like, "Oh, you picked the hardest medium."
What are you talking about?
So hard? Like, I don't get it. Everything in art is hard. Like, what are you talking about? Why is it any harder than anything else? As with anything, you can play the piano,
Yeah.
And after a week you could play something on the piano. I don't know what it'll be, but you can do something. But there are various tiers, right, of like where you can go or where you can excel at. For instance, if I give you a kazoo, there's only so high you can go with the skill level of a kazoo. You can probably do some amazing things with a kazoo, but or let's say a triangle or something.
Yeah, exactly. You have literally.
You can do some cool stuff, and that is an actual instrument in huge orchestras, and it's there.
It's necessary.
I think that's where it talks about like sort of like complexity versus what you can create out of it. Like everything, I think, takes effort and work and some level of skill to achieve those things. But
Yeah, definitely. So the next question is, what do you want your artistic legacy to be? Like, what do you want to be known for? You knew it was coming.
Just to clarify, I had no idea what any of these questions were going to be.
Yeah, you're right.
What do I want my artistic legacy to be? Here's an art book of Tony Moy stuff, and hopefully it doesn't suck.
Oh, yeah. Fair enough.
In weird moments, looking through the internet, and thinking about the future of art and how it's consumed. Like you go on Pinterest, you go on Google, like there's just art that's coming up like constantly.
Yeah.
It's everywhere. But I guess just in terms of that legacy question that you kind of said, is like, I hope that my stuff remains interesting enough that 20, 30, 40, 50 years after I stop painting or drawing or whatever else, that simple searches on the internet will have my art still pop up.
Yeah.
They're not looking for, Tony Moy, blah. But if they just look up like watercolor, Totoro, or watercolor X-Men, or whatever else, like, there's a piece or two of my thing up there. That's kind of like maintaining some level of relevancy. Like I think that's how I think of like legacy.
So can you describe some more of the process of like how whenever you get a commission and it's one of the high-end commissions that you do, like from start to finish, what's your process on that?
The best one I give you guys, I did a cover for Batman that I take and Batman versus the Max.
Hey, I saw that one.
That cover. My basic process of this, I came up with a couple of sketches for the cover. I had my favorites, but I sent it in and they said, okay, we'll do this one. Like, okay, great. I take the sketch, and if it's something I'm really trying to figure out and play around with, I scan the sketch in digitally, tighten it up and kind of redrew it digitally, and then tested out some colors on it, right? And so, and by testing out, like I said, so this is where I've played with digital painting and stuff like that. I'll just go at it for about 15, 20 minutes at a time and just try different palettes. Like, does this work? No. So the digital part is really a useful tool I found when you're trying to challenge or push yourself maybe a little bit, or it's something where, hey, I don't want to mess it up, right? The challenge with watercolor is that if you mess up further on in the process, that's it.
It's hard to fix.
It's very difficult to kind of roll back and fix things. Redo a section of it. So I'll go through that with the digital. Either I'll print it out 11 by 17 and then transfer it with a rubbing, or I do have a projector. Sometimes I'll project down and transfer my drawings or something to a paper. And from the other thing I'll do is I'll transfer it to a smaller paper as well. And sometimes I'll do two. One will be a smaller piece, and I'll quickly test some colors. I'll do like maybe an hour of painting like a smaller piece, just to make sure that I got my colors right, or they're blending well, and it'll definitely be a slightly unfinished piece. Some of my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle pieces have a smaller study, and then they're a larger, like 10 by 14 or larger, like actual original piece. And so there'll be some of that, and then there's the final piece that I work on, and by the time you get to the final piece on those types of things, like you've already tested out the actual paints or colors that you're actually going to use. You've figured out all of the line work you're confident in, or the proportions and things like that. You've tested out other options for colors, so you're not testing things on the final per se. And so it's more of a straightforward, like, okay, let's just do that work. And you're just kind of marching through that process of whatever painting process that I kind of feel like, there's a few different approaches with watercolor that I can go, whether it's very technical in detail or very loose and flowy.
Yeah, so there's a couple things, like, some people who do like super realism would blend and stuff between layers, and then some people who do a more painterly look, which I feel like most of your stuff's more painterly than photorealism, but
thank you.
It's really good work. I'm gonna pop up an image of some of Tony's work right now. It just depends on your preference on which direction you want to go with it.
Yeah, for me, like, one of the things with watercolor is that when I look at it, like, what attracts my eye, I should say, is that I know that it's watercolor. Like, there's some amazing oil painted pieces, digital pieces, or acrylic pieces sometimes, where I look at, and you see it on your screen or whatever else, and you're like, I don't know what that is. Is that oil? Like, if it's oil, I'm super impressed. If it's acrylic, I'm also super impressed. If it's digital, for some reason, I'm like, oh, okay, that looks pretty good for digital. Like, I expect that.
It's crazy. Some people confuse my pieces for oil sometimes, and it's like, how do you get that from? I don't know.
So, like, when I approach, like, watercolor, I always try to think, like, okay, let me keep some part of it that is definitely watercolor, whether it's a drip, whether it's some sort of, like, balloon effect, or some sort of, like, blending or something like that, where it's like, oh yeah, this feels
the super smooth gradients and stuff.
Like that. And there'll be certain parts of it where I try to go realistic and really tight. But I always try to find some parts where you're like, oh yeah, this is definitely watercolor.
Yeah, exactly. So if you could change one thing about your artistic career, what would it be?
One thing about my artistic career?
Yeah.
It's a tough one. So, like, it took me a while to get into it. Like I said, I had the day job, and I taught at an art school before and stuff like that. I taught design at art school, and then taught them art. And it's one of those things where, because I was in the business world, because I was like, all those different steps helped round me out enough, I think, to be an artist in today's climate, right?
Right.
I spoke at a high school class, and one of the students asked me a question. He was like, oh, I'm going to this school, it's an art school kind of a thing, and I'm like, do you have any recommendations on what classes I should take? I was like, yeah, go take an accounting class, go take a marketing class.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Go take one of those other classes. Like, you're obviously going to an art school.
Mm-hmm.
You're driven enough to want to do that and to do something on what you've already done and accomplished so far. Learning art is probably not going to be your problem, or like, figuring that stuff out is probably not going to be your problem. What's going to be scary for you is probably going in and going like, oh, I gotta figure out, my how do I evaluate my inventory? How do I deal with accounting or think about things in a marketing sort of a way. And what does that really mean?
And even questions like, how do I price my work?
How do I price my work? What does valuation mean?
Exactly.
And do I have a strategy around pricing? What's there's a lot of learning about how people actually go through. There's a lot of psychology in the purchase process that people think about, right? And you can learn a lot, I guess, from that. And so I think all those things, and especially even teaching for me, helps get me comfortable speaking in front of groups or just talking in general, to where I'm at a convention or the Twitch or whatever else. Like I'm comfortable talking.
What do you feel like is your greatest success and your greatest failure?
I feel like there was a shift in how I thought about being creative in art. And there's actually two of them there, I guess, are sort of related in my head for some reason. I don't think they are. One was actually not to look at creativity, I think, as a race,
right?
As a competition. I remember for a long time I did. It was like, oh, I'm better than that person. Like I'm better than this person. I would go to a lot of conventions before I actually went behind the table at conventions, things like that. And that was my experience with other artists and stuff like that. I'm like, why is this person here? Why is this person there? Like I'm better than that. Oh, that person's really good. Like I'm never gonna be there. Like holy cow, that guy's amazing. And then you start feeling low about yourself, or you're feeling too uppity about yourself. And I remember going through those sort of crazy swings and whatnot. And it wasn't, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it wasn't until I kind of realized that it isn't a competition. It isn't a race. There's so many different styles or whatever else. You don't try to actively pursue these things. Just let it just be appreciative of either the artist behind the work or the effort that actually went into it, or whatever else, and that it's you're running at your own pace, and maybe it had something to do because I challenged myself many years back to run a couple marathons,
right?
And that was it. Like it didn't matter how slow or fast you did that marathon. The fact that you finished the marathon was the feat, and maybe it was some of that leaking in through my perception of art. I think one of the things it is sort of an internal mental approach to art that changed, that allowed me to, I think, just be more accepting of allow myself to learn better, I guess. That's I think that was one of my larger accomplishments. Because sometimes I think we get in our own way, or I did at least as well when I was younger. Got in my own way of learning. Like I am this. This is what I do. Like I'm better than this. I don't need to do this. One of my biggest failures.
It's hard to judge yourself in that kind of light. I know.
I mean, so I'm a big believer in anytime someone does something bad or wrong or whatever is a chance to improve. So I've made it this far, so whatever failures there have been,
right,
it's just something to improve upon. Like, oh, I messed up this. There probably could have been things where I thought back and been like, I could have made a connection here, or I should have done something else here, or I should have gone in a different direction in my life here. There are times where I'm like, well, man, if I only went to an art school, or if I only, started this whole thing after college or something like that, like I'd be so much farther now. Like, but then would I? Would
right,
I?
yeah.
Like all those little failures along the way, all those little, I don't say failures. I just think of them as like roadblocks or speed bumps.
Yeah. Let's rephrase it to, what is the best learning opportunity you've experienced? That's a better way to put it.
Best learning. Like Eric Larson from Savage Dragon.
Yeah.
I've heard many people kind of have a similar story. But one of the best decisions was me trying to show him my comic book portfolio. It was at a convention.
Yeah.
There was just a couple people in front there. There weren't too many people, and I remember showing him. It was a black and white Daredevil work that I tried to do, and he ripped me apart. Like, I didn't have an ass to shit out of after that. Like, there wasn't one line correct. I didn't even do my panels right. If it was that.
It was that bad.
Why is this way? Why do that? This is right. And he held no punches. There was no shit sandwich, just the shit.
Yeah.
Right. And he made me question super hard after that. I was like, "Oh, thank you, sir."
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, as you should be. Somebody with that, status is you're gonna show them your stuff, and you're like, whatever they say is gonna be law to you because that's your perception of them.
Yeah. He's like, he didn't even tell you to keep practicing. He was like, yeah, this is not worth it. I was like, okay.
Ouch.
Yeah. There was no just keep practicing this or try to practice that. It was like, yeah, there's nothing here.
Yeah. That's some harsh words.
And you know what? Like, I still remember that to this day, and there are other artists that I talked to that are like, oh yeah, Eric Larson? Oh yeah, my God. But I needed that.
Yeah.
And as I get to be open to that sort of thing, after that, I was like, give it to me. Like, after I could take anything after that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would show myself, just don't tell me like this was good, or just give me the shit.
Yeah, tell me what I did wrong so I can fix that on my next piece. Yep. It's not about like, oh yeah, you did so good on this piece, but this is wrong and this is wrong and this is wrong. It's like a sandwich, like you said. It's like a shit sandwich, and so they tell you the good, then they tell you the bad, then they tell you the good again.
Yeah.
But just give me the bad, and I'll fix the bad. I know what the good is. Whatever you didn't say was bad is obviously good.
Yeah. There was it was a trial and a learning experience to separate the art from the artist. Right? Like that was the art. And that's the other thing. Like I mentioned this too. Like as an artist, you're told to go in the corner and sit by yourself and you're supposed to pour your soul. You're supposed to that like stereotypical like put your innermost, deepest thoughts and put everything you have into this creation in front of you.
Yeah, super emo version of an artist.
Below, and then have them rip it apart.
Yeah. Yeah,
and
exactly.
Don't take it personally.
That's the biggest tip that you could give is don't take it personally whenever somebody says, hey.
But it's so hard.
Yeah.
It is hard.
Because you spent the time and the materials and all that stuff, and it's hard to take that advice. I'd say advice, but it's more like critique. It's hard to take that critique with a grain of salt. You can't just make it not hurt your feelings and help you at the same time. It's gonna be both. You're gonna experience both, and you just gotta get over it. To be honest.
No. Some people, and the reason why there's a shit sandwich, and they usually do that for, like when you're students or school or you're in class kind of thing, you kind of get that more, is because some people, it's better if they slowly build up to it.
Yeah.
Or you have an Erik Larson in your life, and you just get pushed out of the nest, and you're falling down a cliff, and you're like, you know what? You don't have any wings. This is gonna hurt when you land. That's it.
Oh, is this how I fly?
I'm pushing you off so you can fly. It's like you're gonna hit the ground first, and then maybe you'll learn to fly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's trial and error is all it is. All right, so we're gonna hit the lightning round. They're easy questions. Don't worry about it. So the lightning round, we're gonna go ahead and start with coffee or tea.
Coffee or tea? Tea in general. I had to wean myself off of coffee many years ago when I tried to stay up late, and I drank like a triple espresso, and I passed out an hour later. I was like,
ouch.
And I woke up, and I'm like, drool on the paper and everything else, and I was just like, oh, like I just drank I had an IV of caffeine that just went into my body, and I passed out.
Yeah.
Like that day. So I eschewed the coffee, and then later on, I enjoy it now once in a while.
Right.
But I don't do either one on a routine.
Right. So the next one is favorite Ninja Turtle.
Favorite Ninja Turtle, Donatello.
DC or Marvel?
Marvel, X-Men.
Right. Favorite video game?
Favorite video game? Ever or recently?
Ever.
Ever?
Yeah.
Favorite video game ever?
It's a hard one, isn't it?
It is. I remember. I'll say Warcraft, World of Warcraft for now, but I'm pretty sure I'll kick myself and say like, oh, it was this one.
Yeah.
I'll do that one only because that was the game that made me realize I was addicted to gaming.
Yeah, I mean, it's the game that made everybody realize they were addicted to gaming, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
All right, favorite current game?
Wasn't that one? No. It was World of Warcraft. No. It was EverQuest?
EverQuest.
EverQuest was right. It was about the same. It was something kind of like World of Warcraft. One of those two.
Yeah.
Regardless of it, I remember doing a search on like how many hours I've played in the past year, and it was an entire month. An entire month I was logged on to this game.
Oh,
I
wow.
lost an entire month of my life. Not just like the days, but like full hours of a month.
Yeah.
Just...
That's crazy. I mean, like, there's some games nowadays where it's like you spend a month of your time and you're like a third through the story.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I was like, all right, yeah, that's, I can't keep doing that.
Yeah.
It's not a sustainable way to live your life. And took a break from video games and then learned to play in a much more healthy
lifestyle. Yeah. So favorite current game?
Right now it would have to be Overwatch and Path of Exile Overwatch. Both of those I can like turn on, and like Overwatch is easy because there's no like ongoing storyline or anything else. It's just like, okay, turn on, do a match or two, and turn it off.
All right, so favorite Batman story?
Favorite Batman story? I don't know. I don't know. I don't remember the specifics of it, but it's a story where you have like Batman and he's like dragging something behind, and it's like this story of him. It's just I can't even quite remember it, but it turns out at the end he's like dragging this treasure or whatever else, and he's like going delusional. He's going through snow and he's hiking up things and he's fighting bad guys or whatever else. And at the end, it realizes that he's been dragging the Joker through the snow. Like,
oh wow!
Or whatever. It was just. I think it was just a issue somewhere. I read it. I was young as a kid.
Yeah. All right. Last question. Favorite color?
Sprite. What was it?
Favorite color?
Oh, favorite color.
Yeah.
Um, right now, it's a combination of quinacridone rose or phthalocyanine blue. What are those two?
For the non-artist viewers, can you explain those colors? No, so quinacridone, I can't pronounce it. The rose one it's a pink one.
Yes, quinacridone rose is a wonderfully pungent pink. The best way to do this.
Oh, your green screen's chopping.
Let's see, I'll do it here. That is the quinacridone rose.
Isn't that beautiful?
There you go. There's that. And
the drip.
This is the phthalo blue, pretty much. We'll just toss that here.
Yeah. Those are some really nice colors, I'm going to be honest with you. I got to get some. And I know your preference is M. Graham, right?
Yeah. M. Graham is... they're... So one of the things is that M. Graham watercolors, they add, I think it's a blackberry honey or something like that to the formulation. And what that does is that it keeps the paint from drying up hard like a cake, right?
Yeah.
And so not that it's it's like a super bad thing if something dries up like a cake, but typically the process is a watercolor. You have to take the water, you have to reactivate that cake. Usually it's not much. But with the M. Graham paints, you can use less water to reactivate.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because it's already kind of jelly. And so you can get, if you really want to, it's much easier to get really high saturation. It takes a little while to get used to it.
Right.
And into like that fine control. But once you do, like you're able to drop in some super colors, pigmented colors, or you can like wash it out a little bit more depending on what you want out of that.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll drop a couple links for the viewers in the description below for the two colors that you demonstrated too. So at this point, it's just time to plug the socials and websites and stuff. So whatever you want to plug, you can plug.
Everything altogether is on tonymoy.art, which is my website. But Twitch is Tony_Moy, same thing as my Instagram. I'm trying to do a little better on my Twitter, but it's pretty horrible.
I don't even have a Twitter, so.
Yeah. And I think it's Tony Moy 88.
Okay.
So, but otherwise, you just look up Tony Moy and you'll find me.
And I'll drop the links for those in the description as well. So, but yeah, thank you so much for letting me interview you, and it was very valuable information that we received here. So hopefully other people brought value to it. Tony also has a YouTube channel, and I'll put a link for that in the description as well.
Also, I have a couple of conventions coming up, so I guess I should give out my convention schedule as well.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I have a small one in Indiana, Northwest Indiana Con, and then it's Aloha Con in Hawaii.
Oh, nice.
C2E2, Chicago, Emerald City and Seattle, Awesome Con are the next couple that are coming up. Awesome Con in DC, I believe.
Thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you, Tony, for letting me interview you. So we're going to go ahead and head out now, so we'll see you later.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, bye.